All right. Okay. So here we are, everyone. Another round of the film round table. This is episode number 14 for us. And as always, if there's something you want to catch up on, we've got some great stuff that exists in our vault. Please go to filmroundtable.org. You can check out all of the back episodes there that's stored in our vault. So our guest today, we have one of our partners here at the round table. We have Mr. Bradford Young, and we are honored to have with us here Jody Lee Lipes coming in to us from Brooklyn. Yes, sir?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So virtual applause. Okay. We have a lot of listeners out there, and it's kind of lonely when there's just three of us or two of us in a box. So you guys should know that everyone's clapping for you. All right. So before we begin, as we all know, this all started because of the fact that we were all iced during the COVID, the start of the COVID pandemic. All of us as filmmakers for the first time were able to gather in space and have these kind of conversations. So we here at the Film Roundtable always think it's important to bear witness to that and talk about where we are numbers wise. So as of this morning, we are at 900,000 worldwide deaths due to the COVID pandemic, and 190,000 of those are here in the United States of America. Also, we continue to have some social protests that are going on around the United States and around the world, in other cities as well. So we always like to take this moment to honor all of our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, as well as our First Nation brothers and sisters whose lives have been taken by the hands of police brutality and all other senseless acts of violence, not only here in the United States, but around the world. So what we always like to do is start with a moment of silence for these two things. So please, everyone in the virtual space, join us for a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. That means a lot to us and everyone out there. It's something that's become a part of what we do. So we're going to do things a little bit differently today. I'm actually going to step away and leave the screen to my two friends here. And please, people, keep sending in questions. I will monitor the questions. And then at the end, I'll come back with a handful of them and we'll do a little Q&A session based upon some of the things that came up and might not have been addressed as the two of you speak. So right now, my friend Bradford, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I'm going to step away. Jody, it was very wonderful to get to meet you, and I'll speak to you guys at the end of the session, okay?
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. What up, Jody?
Yo, what's up, man? Good.
Am I right?
What'd you do today?
Dude. I got every morning my son Olu comes and asks me what the weather's gonna be. That's the other thing about COVID, man. It's crazy. These kids, man. These kids they're starting to develop their own little anxieties. They need comfort, you know what I mean? So for him, the weather change is another thing added to the pile of stuff to worry about. So he's like, what's the weather today? That's at 6:30. Then what I do? Then I'm helping my sister do something, so I came down and I worked on that, and I did a little writing. That's it, man. Now I'm here. It's kind of early now. Now half the family's gone, and I'm just left with Olu. Olu's upstairs.
That's cool.
He's getting his viewing time for the hour before that joker goes off. You know. What about y'all? What y'all up to?
I did physical therapy in the morning. My knee is kind of screwed up. And then I came home and I watched Mother of George. I got inspired for today, which is a movie I'd never seen before. And you've always told me that I should watch, and I finally did. And that was
hold on, that's the first time? That's the first time?
Yep. And yeah, and I started thinking, I was like, what should I watch? And I was like, I've never seen this movie. I don't know why I've never seen this movie. And I started to think like, oh, this is interesting because this was probably like a very particular moment in your life and like in your career, where like things really turned a lot like after that, period in your life. And so I just started thinking about that and I was curious, like what was going on in your life at that time, and like what were you thinking about in terms of like how you shot that movie and what you were interested in, compared to like to now, you know?
Yeah, no, it's funny you saying that because I'm going to ask you the same question about I know this much to be true because I just feel like that it's a very intuitive question, sir. Because I just think that's we were talking about that the other day. You know what I mean? When those milestones are, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like Mother George was. I'm trying to remember what was going on when that. I mean, life was life then. You know what I mean? I was just like, I hadn't been in New York that long, which is a big leap for me. And it was my second movie with Andrew, which is another huge. I felt like a big leap, though I didn't anticipate. You know what I mean? Like you never go to any of these films thinking people are gonna like them. You know what I mean? Something like Mother George is so particular. You know, it's such a particular story with a particular form of reality, and you never think people will get into it. So I think more than anything, I was just happy to be making another film with Andrew because I've just known about his work and hadn't known him until Rest of City, but I've known of his work forever. So it's just, for me, I was just happy to be back in the wheelhouse with this cat, you know what I mean? Because in my mind, he's like, he could work with anybody he wants to, you know? So it was just great to be with him. And I think,
this was before you started having kids?
Oh, yeah. This is like
12, right?
2012. So it's like 4 years.
Okay.
No, a year. We finished in 11. We finished in 2010 or 11, and then it came out.
Okay.
A year before my son was born. So we weren't even really thinking about having kids. We didn't start thinking about having kids until I shot Saints, which was right after Mother George. So, I was just happy to be in a place where I was like, I still thought that, where we are now, I just never, this wasn't I wasn't part of the vision. I just was still trying to just make a good film and do my best. And every shot then mattered. It was like every shot was every shot was nerve-wracking, you know what I mean? It was, and then you're working with somebody like Andrew where you're just learning so much, and the joy of learning and remembering how much you learn when you work with people that you really love, and you feel like you have a kindred spirit with. And so I, more than anything, the one thing I can reflect on is that for all the things that I don't remember, the one thing I can reflect on is that I felt totally fulfilled. You know what I mean? Like really felt like I was making a movie that was a culmination of everything that I was told or I believe film should be, So yeah,
I mean, it definitely feels like you. It's like there's just always this simplicity to what you do that really grabs me. And I think like in particular the whole opening, like the wedding, is just like, it's so incredible. And like how slow it is, like even like the dancing and everything is like so slow. And I don't know, it gave, I was watching it and I was thinking to myself, like I always think of like Gordon Willis or like Harrison Beach or something. It's like if you're flipping through the channels and one of their movies comes on, like you don't even have to know that it is one, you just kind of stop.
Yeah, I already know,
like,
right?
And it just totally had that like grabbed me feeling, and the color is so incredible. And
but it's funny you say that, because I feel like there are a lot of folks whose work I love, you know what I mean? Contemporaries of the past, or contemporaries, who I feel like who speak to me, you know what I mean? There's a lot of sensitive people doing very sensitive work. Mother George has its own sort of sensitivity that I think is in its own like world into its own in a way, because its origin is from a sort of very familiar world for me, but very alien to Western sort of concepts of family, tonality, love, life, marriage. It's breaking all those rules. So for that film to have ever been the 3-act Aristotelian sort of structure would have just totally been a disservice to the overall holistic nature of the film. But I feel like, man, honestly, like when I knew who you were, you know what I mean? Because we were in 2009, we were at, and I seen After School. So I knew, like, I was just like, this cat, when I met you, you don't remember. That's just so crazy.
Yeah, I remember.
Nah, you don't remember, bro. Don't try to play me.
What are you talking about?
It was at Deluxe.
Wait, no, I don't remember that.
See, you don't remember that? It was at Deluxe. It was a gathering for the 2009 10 filmmakers.
Oh shit! Yeah, no, I do remember that now. Yeah. And Lena was there, right? Too.
Yeah. When I came up in there, bro, I wasn't even looking for nobody but you. I was like, yo, what's this cat Jody? And at that time, you were Lips. I was like, what's this Jody Lee Lips dude? And I wrote in there, and I was like, yo, this cat is, he's doing good. I felt something with After School, but Martha, man, that's when I was like, yo, this is my brother. This is like my cousin. This is like the cat that, and it's so telling. It's funny how we came in 2009 together. We already done a couple of movies before that had like whatever very independent, in independent circles, they were celebrated as like pieces of American cinema. And I still feel like all the films we did before that, before Martha, or before, I would say even Mother of George, Nathan, Body Saints, at the same time, like, but I feel like, when I did Saints, I was channeling, you know what I'm saying? Like I was definitely thinking about your work, you know what I mean, as a contemporary, because I know that we both think about Gordon Willis, or we both always think about Harris, you know what I mean? We fascinated by what they did, I think about where he did Carrabba as well, as folks know, but like for me, not to try to twist the conversation, but I want to twist it back to a view, because I want to remind you too that, like, man, we share so much in common, bro. You know what I mean? Like we share so much in common, and I know that's why we always check in on each other.
Yeah. Whenever I feel lost or in over my head, I always write to you, because I didn't. It's like I always feel like Bradford's gonna understand this like more than anybody.
You're like my. What's the analogy? I'm trying to figure out, like, two MCs that like always got at each other, had mutual respect, but always had like a bit of a like when I send you frame grabs, I'm always like, don't forget about me, dude. I'm out here and I'm channeling you. And it's always me always trying to say that, let's break these chumps.
Well, that, actually, it's funny you bring that up, because the last few times you've done that, I was just like, what the fuck is this? Because like, it was crazy like how much you had, and I'm sort of trying to bring this back to like what this is about or whatever, but like, I remember just being like, wow, this is a serious, like, thought through change. Like this is like really pushing the boundaries of just film in general, period, but also just like what you've done before, and like growing in a huge way. And some stuff that like never came out, some stuff that like but like never coming out. But like it was just, it really shocked me, and in a beautiful way. And I just remember thinking like, shit, like how come I'm not like going this far out? Like I got to think about that, So yeah, it just, and again, like, that's why I watched this movie today, because I feel like Mother of George, because I don't know, it's just so interesting to me, like how things have changed and why, and all that stuff. And so I'm interested in like what you want to do next, like what you want to do now, like maybe you don't know, but I'm curious.
You know, it's funny because like when I see I know this much to be true, or I look at Martha, you know, or man, you know, I just remember you sending me stills from Bluebird,
Bluebird, that's right.
Bluebird, right, Bluebird, and just being like, this cat is trying to end his career. Like this, this shit is so dark. You know what I'm saying? This stuff is so underexposed. And what's so crazy about it is like when I would talk to you about it, it's like it would never be just for that. It was always the methodology around it. The result was incredible, but you know, at some point you kind of like are done with the result because you just want to know like, how did you do that? Not because I'm going to try to bite your style or do it, but I'm also like, how did you I'm just blown away how you did it. You know, I always look at your material. I always look at what you're doing, and when I talk to you, I always feel like you have a healthy sense of like guerrilla warfare in the film industry. Like you come in and out as you please, and you know, I know you to be very thoughtful about your next choice. So before I even answer that, I just want to remind you too, man, that like you're an inspiration, your work, and I know for most people that are watching this, you're an inspiration because you take risk, and sometimes the risk, it's not about you do risk in spite of the fact that the risk may not allow you to be able to take care of your two kids. And, you know, you and Ellen have such a great partnership. You know what I mean? Like, you know, one salary gone can dismantle everything. You live in Brooklyn, it's expensive. Like there's a whole bunch of things you have to consider, you know, when you make certain artistic choices, because we're so dependent on people to hire us to make moves, that any underexposed frame or frame that doesn't work or people challenging your vision for the film, you know, could really dismantle all of that. When I see your work, I see that you think you're beyond that, and that people have to really understand that you're a storyteller. You know what I mean? Like none of that is self-indulgent. It's all because you're inspired by the story. And I know you curate the pictures you take, the movies you take. Look, I just call it pictures, man. I hate when I say picture. Movie. The picture you took, the movie you take, the movies you take, because, you know, you really, you know, you're thinking about the next move, you know what I mean? And even in the ones where, you know, I see some like photographic density symmetry, I never see the same spirit, you know what I mean? I see a different part of you every time. And because I know you're an artist and you're trying to study, you know, elevate your own body of work. But for me, man, you know, I never know I don't know what's next, you know what I mean? But it was clear to me, like, I was not going to be able to do this until I'm 50 years old or 55 years old. I know that's very young. That's still a young person. You're still a young person then, but you know, we think about the greats, like we think about, you know, Greg, you know what I mean? When I talk to Greg, I'm like, this dude's gonna be doing this when he's 80. You know what I mean? Because he's just like, he's sunk in, you know what I mean? He's sunk in the best way. You know, he's got the beautiful balance of being a relentless artist, like artistry, and he's an insane technician. And that balance is like that's not, you might not be able to learn that. You might not be able to get to that point in your career. You might just, I know I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm relentless for the art. I'm in it for the art. And sometimes I don't even know what the technical thing is because I don't have time to put into that. So I guess I'm saying that to say that, like, you know, I'm oftentimes thinking about my own mortality, not my own human mortality, but my artistic mortality as a cinematographer. And sometimes I just don't, I'm okay with it not carrying on for the next 20 years. I'm okay if I only have 10 years left, because I've tried to pivot in the in-between times to make art and work that speaks to me, you know what I mean? Speaks to me directly and speaks to people who my films don't speak to. You know, it's funny, man, like a lot of my friends in Baltimore, they don't some of them don't watch none of the movies I shoot.
Yeah.
You know, they ain't watched the film since Mother of George because they're just like, that other stuff you make, I'm not interested in. And that's sobering.
A compliment.
Yeah, it's a compliment. You know what I mean? Like it's sobering to me because it makes me realize that, like, we take all this, we think everybody's watching, everybody's checked in, and all the critical analysis and all that is like the most important thing in the world. But the stuff that they really want to see is like, you know, the stuff the little Bolex stuff we do with our kids, or like the poetry, the poetry we write.
It's so easy to forget, you know, like being in an industry where people kind of often evaluate you for what you've just done. it's hard to remember that that's not how a lot of people are, you know, when you're like surrounded by people like that all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it can be very sobering.
Yeah. And I, listen, I don't want a fine art career because I feel like the same problematic structures that exist in the film industry are special and unique to their own. Like the film industry is its own like animal and its own beast that, you got to be in the right place, right mood, surrounded by the right warriors, soldiers, community to like make it through unharmed, many chinks in many strong people's armor. But the art world, you know what I mean? Because I know you and I both have friends that are float that are in that world, or maybe not come onto film or float in and out. You know what I mean? The art world has its own problematic structure, and for me, it's not a one-to-one trade-off. You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to be in the art world. You know what I mean? Like I don't want that for myself. I just want a certain kind of freedom that honestly, this COVID moment really has me remembering that most of the opportunities where I've been able to express myself as an artist, as a collaborator, or have not been at my own will. You know what I mean? I'm there because I wanted to be there, but they were not structured or written or there for me to self-authorize. They're presented to me for things that I can participate in, but they don't come from me. You know what I mean? And there's a difference. They both are great. You know what I'm saying? But there's a difference when you're conceptualizing something. And I would love to hear you talk about it because I know you're a director as well. Like when you conceptualize something and you do it versus when somebody asks you to come collaborate and do something. And what I do know is that, I can't spend the next like 20 years of my life waiting for somebody to give me an opportunity, which is essentially always going to be an opportunity because it's a blessing to tell stories through images. Like I don't want to wait. And I'm not saying that's making me I'm moving towards directing or anything like that. I'm just saying that like I got to figure out other ways to express myself, and I'm happy. I'm happy if it's not a film and it's just something I'm experimenting with, or I'm happy if it's me spending a few weeks working in a friend's garden and not being a filmmaker for a while. Like that for me is what I'm trying to pivot towards. I'm trying to pivot towards something more revelatory to myself about myself. Which films don't always do for me.
It's hard to find fulfillment outside of your career sometimes, like when your career is like as full on as yours is, or as like a lot of people's are. It's hard to find like an outlet that's as powerful as that that you can like motivate yourself. And we both directed a little bit, and I've actually sort of gotten into a period in my life where I'm just really excited about shooting for the first time and being a DP for the first time, which we were talking about before. But like, I think having worked as a director, like in some capacity, even though it hasn't been a lot, just a little bit, but it really, to me, like serves being a DP in a huge way. I think like there's a lot that I take from having gone through that and like been on stage the way you have to be when you're a director, and like exposing yourself the way you have to when you're a director. That is useful for me to like keep in the back of my mind when I'm working for someone else. Like how hard that can be. I think it's really hard to feel like how hard that can be unless you try it. And you like try it at a level where like you want to do it, like you really want to. And so, that's been really valuable. I mean, it's been valuable for me because I got to make the films that I wanted to make and like direct a little bit of TV and stuff like that. And that's valuable in itself. But I think right now it's just something I really appreciate because I feel like I can identify with a director, producer, or an editor more than I would have been able to, just the kind of person I am if I had just worked as a DP.
Right.
And it's just like anything, like going back and forth between, documentary and like scripted stuff, like you draw all of these new ideas and these different ideas from being in that other world. And also something we were talking about, you know, I've had the opportunity to work on like really small projects that friends are making during COVID, just because I've had more time, and it's been like extremely satisfying. Like it feels very like childlike.
Yep.
Like it's like no tech, like none of that like crappy stuff about being a DP, and all just sort of like childlike responding to what is around you, and just like being like, oh my God, I'm like a child, except I have all this like knowledge now that I've gained for the past, you know,
right
15 years or whatever doing this, and I can just play, and there's no stakes, and there's nobody telling anybody what to do, and it's like there's no adults, and it's fun.
Yep.
So
and that's funny because I essentially never left. It's never that was always the case for you. It just took this moment, right, to like remind yourself that part of the reason why you are who you are and the choices you make is because you're still trying to connect to that, like, for lack of a better euphemism, that inner child, you know?
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's funny because I think it's funny that you that reminds me of I'm just gonna say it, but that reminds me of like our journey on Space Jam. You know what I mean? Because I felt like not only were we trying to tap into something that we felt like Terrence was trying to tap into something he felt like children would love. You know what I mean? Specifically Black children, but children in general. But in order to do that, everybody has to arrive at that point. Like you have to make it from that perspective as well. And you know, it's just interesting how, you know, you go through this whole journey of like building and making things happen and making choices. And sometimes the choices are more strategic than they are. They're like 30% about getting the feeling and 70% about how you're going to pivot, how you can pivot your career or your art or whatever you're doing for the next time, right? So there's always a balance of why you do stuff. Some people don't play that game. For me, I played it a couple of times, and one time it worked, other time it didn't really work. But it's interesting how you build all this material to get yourself to a point where you feel like you can be so childlike that nobody will stand in the way of that because you've earned it, or the result of that is palpable in the movies you make, and you know, you continue to work with the same directors, or, you know, whatever it is, you continue to make the films for the same community that you make films for. But then you meet that one animal, that one beast that just basically tells you that you can't be childlike. You can't be you can't be that because it doesn't apply, or people aren't ready for that. And you know deep down in your heart that people aren't ready for it, because that's essentially why they come to the movies anyway. And it's just, I've just found that this moment has given me some real space to reflect on how, if it's not about that, man, then it's like knowingly about that. You know what I mean? Sometimes you kick into gear and it's not, you don't have to think about it. Like, for instance, I'm sure with Derek, that's not an explicit thing that has to be discussed or even emphasized. Like, you never had to go to, well, I don't know, it's a question really. You know, I in my mind, because that film is so, that epic series film is so, it's one film to me, but it's so insane to me. And it's like, I know, because I know both of you, and I stood next to you. I work with Derek. I know his work. I love your work. For me, that collaboration that was going down was just like, I just couldn't wait. And then it came and it was that. But, you know, I'm sure I'm right when I say that, you know, those aren't things that you have to say, man, I'm just trying to like be me. You know what I mean? Like, if anything you say to Derek, you're gonna say to Derek, like, man, I'm trying to get this feeling, like, I am not there yet. Or he's saying that to you, you know what I mean? That's a different thing than you trying to prove to somebody that, no, I'm trying to tell you, like, I know because of all the things I've shot or all the things I've done, but all the feelings I have. Like, forget how many times I put the camera up or put a lens on, but all the feelings that I have that this is the right thing to be doing. And the thing about it is that right thing is like, it's just being a child. It's being on the brink of what you know about our children is like the brink of like, they got such lizard brains, but at the same time, they're the most intelligent, bright, shining stars in your orbit. You know what I mean? Nobody more brilliant than them. And so it's rough when somebody tells you that, you know, what you're doing is wrong. It's just like, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work. You know what I mean? It doesn't work. You know what I mean? And I accept that when somebody says that's not working. But when it's like, you know, wholesale not working, it seems something else is missing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the time you hear, you know, what an actor is trying to do is just get to that point where they're just responding to what's happening in front of them. And I feel like, you know, Derek, Cian France, you know, directed, I know this much is true. Like so much of what he's doing is, as you know, is like putting the actors in a situation where they can just do what they want to do and like respond how they want to respond to the environment they're in. And I feel like what's so beautiful to me about working with Derek is that feeling of like, okay, like just get it to happen. Like they're going to start doing like the script or whatever they want and then respond to it, you know, like watch it and respond to it. And it's like happening in the moment, you know, it's like happening while you're rolling. And it's like, oh, push the camera over here, you know, and it's like, and we were just doing this music video on Thursday and Friday in the Poconos. And it was crazy because, I mean, obviously I love Derek. It's like, it was, we had this old 3-tube video camera and it was like, you know, we start off a shot and I'm like panning and tilting and then like, without even saying anything, all of a sudden, like he's pulling focus and then like I'm working on the zoom and then he's panning like while we're shooting and without any words spoken. And we're just like doing all this shit and back and forth. And it's like one, you know, it's like one pair of hands, but there's, you know, and
how's that feel though?
It's amazing. Cause it's like, you're really just responding to like whatever comes into your head. And it's like at this point, you know, like I'm trying to serve what he wants. And I feel like I know at this point, like I can kind of like feel what he wants. And so it's beautiful because it's like we're both working together often without words, where it's like we're both trying to achieve the same thing, like in the moment as it's happening. And that's definitely like a child, like awesome feeling where like all the technical stuff is gone and it's kind of just like watching. And
I think more than anything, I would just only correct you on that to say that all the technical stuff is already worked out. He already knows what kind of artist you are. You know what I mean? Like that's why you're there. And that's essentially what I'm always feeling like. It's like, I'm here because we're there because they know what kind of artist or filmmaker we want to be, and we are. And once you get that all that out of the way, then you can surrender. Then it's just like, which is what, you know, if anything, I would just feel like the 2.3.0 version of my journey has got to be that now more than anything, more now than ever. It has to be. We're not even here talking about the look of the film. We're here talking about how we're going to make this film and how we can respond to what the actors are doing, and how are we going to respond to all of the imperfect things that are in front of us, you know? And that for me is the challenge, is what I'm really interested in, you know? And I'm really kind of jealous that, you know, you all had that moment where everybody put their hands on the one thing, and the thing that everybody says the silos us into, which is like the lighting and the desktops and the and you know, the top light and all this stuff that, you know, everybody thinks we have all the answers to. That's not even important because it's all set up anyway. You know what I mean? What's more important right now is like, you know, it's the thing I see in like the Hu Xiaoxin, Mark Ping Bing collaborations, where it's like Millennium Mambo. There's that beautiful scene where the couple, they're like in the apartment. You only see one side of the apartment the whole movie, and they're having this like crazy, intense love thing going on, and like she's sitting at the table and he's going back and forth between these rooms. You get to see like Mark is trying to figure out like what the hell is who Kardashian gonna do next, and he's just kind of like, but it's Mark Pink Bing. It's like, you know what I mean? Like you go watch Norwegian Wood, there's no lack of, forget it, not even say Norwegian Wood. If we know the real story, if we go look at 2046 or we go look at For Love, you know what I mean? There's no, this cat knows what he's doing. So it's kind of unusual to see him doing a little weird, like imperfect pan. But as a filmmaker, or as just an audience, if you know that or you don't know that, you don't care about that because it looks good. It's just what's beautiful is the imperfect thing that happens that you can't predict or you can't do in preparation or in pre-production. That thing is, and I think you said something to me the other day too. You said something to me about trust. It's like, when we got off the phone, I thought about it a lot. It's like, you have your thing. You have your way of interpreting story through lighting. And then you show up and you do that. And then the actors go in the room and then Derek says, do what you got to do. And then he tells you, just get it, however you can get it. You're on Zooms, you're doing stuff I see in the film. You know what I mean? I know what you're doing. You know what I mean? Well, just because I'm technically, I know what you're doing. But you have to trust that. You know what I'm saying? You have to trust that. Like, how does that feel when you're just like, do you have moments where you're like, man, this is going to undermine that one light I put over here? or I never thought they were going to come this close to camera and the window has all the light. And then now they're like,
yeah. I mean, well, yeah, for sure. Because there, on that show, there was no rehearsals, there's no blocking of any kind, there's no marks, and there's no emphasis on repetition from take to take. And we're shooting 2 per 1,000-footers with 2 cameras that can look in any direction. So it's 22.5-minute takes. Even for the stuff that we're doing, that's, motion control for twinning.
Right, for twinning, right.
So like the lights changing or shooting on film, it's 22.5 minutes long. And then I have to come back 5 months later to match the light. And and also like just in the interest of keeping the environment free, like, Ken, our incredible gaffer, Johnny, our incredible key grip, not in there at all.
Johnny.
So yes, it's like, that was stressful. It always feels, and then you're kind of you do a take and then you're like responding in the 5 minutes you have, before you go again for 22.5 minutes. And but I think the feeling that a lot of people have working with Derek is like you're on a tightrope and it's like you feel like if I do, like, I think I'm gonna fall, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna fall. So I have to be really like focused and really just like always thinking, like, oh, your mind is like always on one thing,
Right.
But then like that's where, when you're pushing yourself that hard, like that's when the incredible or like unexpected things happen. So it's like, and yeah, like sometimes, I mean, to me in that situation, particularly just with Derek, it's like the worst thing would be if it didn't look real. Right. And so like, I only worry about, it's not like I worry that the light's bad, because it's not, it's not going to ever be like this perfectly, like, it's never going to be like Mother of George, but it's like, it's more like, is it real enough? And that's when I would tense up. It's like, oh my God, he's sitting on the couch now.
Right.
Like, oh, is this gonna look real? And so, we're shooting like night for day and all this stuff. And
right.
So yeah, it was like 6 months of like feeling so stressed out, but also so completely like creatively fulfilled and like a sense of like accomplishment and fun, like all at once, you know?
Right.
So yeah, that was,
I mean, one of you, I'm kind of, you're saying that and I'm listening to like this, and again, this is me responding to what you're saying. When I think about that, maybe sometimes I emphasize like pedagogy, or I emphasize learning too much. Like I always feel like you can take these concepts and put them within the institution meaning in the most positive way. You can institutionalize these ideas. Because like when I hear you talk about this, I hear like ultimately what I hear is freedom. You know what I mean? I hear like, and it's very spiritual to me, because you have to surrender. It's not just you surrender into your creator, but you also surrender into someone or something that your creator has made in their vision, and that you surrender to them, because trust is the greatest gift that the creator has given us, you know what I mean? And love. And so when I hear it, I hear concepts that I feel should be captured in a teaching, captured in a way, in a movement, in an institution where we can nurture it and grow and develop it and let it evolve and turn into something different, but it has a foundation and a space to grow from, you know? And when I hear the way you guys work together, I feel like it's the total response from an activist, not saying we're activists, but I'm just saying from like an activist, meaning to be active. It is something that I think, being that we're in the world that we're in from an active point of view, from an active perspective, is something that we can, it's something that I feel like young people should hear and should learn from, because I think they need to enact their own sort of version of that or be part of that, because that freedom is really important, because the moment they take the freedom away, they crush all the great talent that we love and adore, and we don't get to know them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's that kind of particular way of working that Derek has developed and like that environment that he's created is the movie. Like that's how the movie feels, right? And
that's
so
how
it's
y'all
like,
make it too, right? That's how you're making it too, right?
Yeah. And so it's like whenever a filmmaker, I think when I was younger, I was like, why is this person like doing this weird stuff? And then it's like, well, that process may be illogical. It may not like make sense on paper, but that's how they get where they're going. And the more kind of like out there and like nonsensical someone's process is sometimes the more that the film will take on its own character and be unique and be special and be a work of art. And so it's like at a certain point you have to kind of get to a place where you can see, okay, like maybe people are angry or upset because this isn't like math, but I have to support this because this is how they get where they're going, you know, and that's what's going to make it special. And so the trust element, like, you know, obviously like Derek in my mind proved himself a long time ago, and I was like lucky to be along for the ride. And so my job is to just totally trust that and, you know, tell him what I think when it's, you know, important to do that. But like really just like you said, just trust is the key. And like going, it's like, okay, I wouldn't make that decision on my own. Like that's good. So this is changing, like it's changing me, and I'm learning how to do it this way now. Right. And it's like the two of us coming together makes this, it's different than how he would do it too. But
right. Of course.
Serving him. So yeah, so that was really cool.
It hurt though. It hurt though a little bit, didn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was no pleasure without pain.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, I remember. I mean, that used to be like the, you know, knowing Derek and knowing the film. You know what I mean? Like that really reminds me of, you know, my teacher. You know, Hailey used to always like, you know, we used to say stuff like, man, we just got to make the, you know, all the right things, right? All the right things that your elder or your teacher would want to hear you say about making film and where film stands in the world and how useful it is, you know, for change or whatever it may be, or healing. And then we would be saying all the right stuff. And then at the end, we would say, yeah, but we just want to have fun. And he'd be like, no, what's fun got to do with it? He'd be like, I just want to have fun. You know what I mean? I think you know, then I couldn't articulate what I meant by fun. Like then I was younger and I still thought fun meant, you know, like that feeling in your stomach where you just feel so much energy, like my son, you know, like my kids, when they're having fun, I know it because it's so human and instinctual for them. But I think for me, fun now means like the feeling of joy or the fun, having fun, knowing that it's so imperfect in the sense of like the way things unfold, that, but even in that moment of like imperfection or just like total decayed, delinquent thing, the fun part is knowing that it's gonna work. That's the part for me that, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I start to have fun. I'm like, what we're doing here right now is totally crazy, but I know it's gonna work. And I know it's gonna work because, you know, we have a team, number one, that makes sense for this film, and we have a director and an editor that will turn this material into what we exactly want it to be. Like Ron, you know, I mean, it's like, that's just, you make, you know, give him a bag of nothing and then it comes back and just like a masterful. And so, not that there was nothing, he had a lot, but it was just making sense of all of that. It requires a certain idea. And I think, I was gonna pivot just a little bit. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too, but like, I'm going back to the little bit of that institution building. I would say, going back to your original question, of like what I want to do next now, we talk more, and I've been thinking about it as we're talking too, and you've been speaking. Like for me, that's what I want to do. You know what I mean? Like
institution building.
Yeah. I look at Ava and I'm like, man, that I want to be like her. You know what I mean? Like I want to take everything I believe in and the stuff I know a community of us believe in and put it into a place, you know what I mean, with people, whether it be a brick and mortar or a community or a few square blocks or whatever, and like turn it into a way of life, you know what I mean? A way of thinking, you know, not a cult, none of that. We're not talking communes or cults, maybe a commune, but just like a way of life, you know what I mean? You know, because I feel like our current situation is we're asking people that, and God bless them, you know what I'm saying? But we're in a moment now where we're asking people who totally do not understand what we're talking about and what we're trying to do. They hear us because they're smart. They have comprehension because they're learned people, and they know what you're saying, but they don't in terms of it's applicable, how it applies to cinema. They do not have the same relationship to it that we have. And again, I'm not saying that judging them for whatever it is that they believe in or what they feel strongly about. I'm just saying that it's clear to me now, to me more than ever, that that I need to create my own situation so that I can continue to work at peace and harmony with the material that directors give me. I need to be enact a place of thinking and studying with other folks so that when I go into these situations, I know I'm not crazy, you know what I mean? And that they know they're not crazy, and that we don't have to ask these people for anything else other than what's already presented to us every day in our everyday lives. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never want to beg anybody for diversity and inclusion because my life is diverse and inclusive. So I'm not going to be begging nobody else to be diverse. I'm going to live by example. You know what I mean? And I know there's space and time where that over in that space, it needs to be repaired. And they're warriors and soldiers who are not playing. They are trying to make great change, and they're making leaps in that space. But my energy, I'm never going to be a roadblock in that. But I'm always going to be. I'm happy to like harbor folks. I'm happy to like when they're running from the cops, when we know they didn't do the wrong, when we know they didn't do nothing wrong. All they did was do what they had to do to defend themselves in their community. Like, this is a door where you can come in here and hide out while they try to like take your food away, like they did to Paul Robeson, or like they did to many of the greats who were in there with them and spoke out against them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know what I can provide is I can provide a safe space and a meal, you know what I mean? And I can like a bed for their children to lay in. Like, that's kind of how I imagine what I would want to give in those spaces. But while I'm doing that, while I open up the front door to let them run out the back door, you know what I'm saying, and close the door on the police, like, I want to create my own institution, you know what I mean? And maybe while they're passing through this house, they're like, oh, what's that picture on your wall? You know what I mean? Like, oh, or when you open the door, somebody says, oh, I didn't think anybody in the neighborhood was down. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to waste no more time trying to get, sorry, it doesn't work. You can go when your brother comes back. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we again like talked about this before, but it sounds to me a little bit like just the idea of like a director creating the environment that they think is fruitful for what they want and what they want to make in the world, how they want the world to be around them. It's like, just like we were talking about with Derek in a way, and I know you're talking about it in like a bigger way, that like you want to integrate your entire life into that. It's not just about like being on set. But I think if I hear you the right way, what you're saying is like you want your morality to kind of like focus everything or guide everything in your life, and that you can use that as an example and to help other people and to make things that you respect. Is that true?
Yeah, like not really help. You know what I mean? Not really help, because that would be too presumptuous. Like, I'm imperfect. I make a lot of mistakes. You know what I mean? Like, I made mistakes. I continue to make mistakes. Some bigger than others. You know what I mean? But when I hear you talk about the way you and Derek work, or what I know when I work with, like, say for instance, because we're talking about Andrew, like we when people come to work with us, it's not just, making a film to subvert the norm. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to keep subverting, because now we've created our own situation. And that's an institution, you know what I mean? Like that. And so hopefully people will come to work with us because they feel supported and loved and whatever they may feel, or not, you know what I mean? Or just challenged, or they feel like it's a space where they can call you out, whatever it may be, you know what I mean? Like, it's a space that you can do all of that. So for me, I see it on like the like local way, you know what I mean? With, like, for instance, what you guys have with, Kasia, Inbal, you know what I mean? Like that is there's something to be, if we could distill human beings into like an element, you know what I mean? I think we would find some traces of similar DNA in all of you, creative DNA, you know what I mean? And that's safe, that's special, you know what I mean? And like, where do we put that so that it's like preserved and represented in every time, and people can learn from it or study it in the most positive ways? Not the Henrietta Lacks way, where they study it and use it for advance everybody, but nobody else gets payment credit or whatever, but like it becomes a way to move, to propel, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what I mean in an institution. I mean, I would love brick and mortar, but I don't know how relevant that is anymore. I don't know if that's important, you know? What I think is more important is just trying to affirm to ourselves once again that the way we do it is the right way, and it's our way, and that's why we make movies. It's expressive on a very personal level, you know what I mean? Nobody can determine that for you, you know? If it's a film that doesn't call for that, which I always argue is there's no place for that. Like, you know, you look at something like Black Panther, it's clear that that's not just popcorn. That's like, there's other stuff at play. You know what I mean? It didn't just have to meet the requirements of it being a Marvel film. It had to meet other requirements in order for it to be felt. And a lot of people felt that film. You know what I mean? That's not, that's not, Marvel cannot take credit for that. That's not something that they have created or wrote or made. That's Coogler and Chad and everybody came to the table to knock it out the park. So I guess is what I mean. It's like, not a, don't run, don't feel like you have a place, but just know that situate yourself in a space where you can always bring that to the table, because it is a way of being, you know what I mean? And that way of being is necessary to yield the results that you see on the screen. That people can experience on set, you know, and that's a worthwhile thing to always be clear on, so that the one young person or the older person, whoever is sitting in the corner that may have not felt the same support or felt supported in the same way all the time, can see that and know that it's still possible to do it. You know what I mean? Like even if you want to do it in those spaces, you can still do it. Or at the same time, if you're not going to do it in that space, you can still have you can have your own. You can create your own space. You know what I mean? The only thing between us doing it with them and us doing it on our own is usually the money. That's usually what it is. They don't have better material. You know what I mean? They're not writing better stories. You know what I mean? We're still writing the story. We take it to them because they have the money. But what if we figured out a way to not have to go to them for the money, or there was somebody that was interested in not creating a new situation, nurturing talent, you know what I mean? Instead of just
the money and the infrastructure to like get it out to people too, right?
Get it out.
That's the other.
There it is, the distribution. Yeah. But I feel like some of that stuff we've already like worked out and figured out. You know what I mean? We just need to take it to the next level. You know, right now it's a great time for us to be thinking about distribution, because nobody's going to the theater. Some people are, but you know, we're in a situation where we can offer up a new alternative. You know, something that's more community based, like project your movie on the side of a wall, or like you know, you said that 2 years ago. Everybody's just like, that's not sustainable. That sounds crazy. And how are we going to do that? Whatever. Like now, it's what option do you have? What option do you have? You know what I mean? So those things are getting worked out. And again, you know, if you're taking on the next film or you're going into the next situation where you're going to make a film, like why not make that part of your mandate? That, you know, in response to how much money you don't get versus how much you put into it when it ends up at these megaplexes, why don't you just distribute it on your own? You're not hurting nobody. You're only hurting yourself when you don't do it, because you're not getting out of it what you needed anyway. And now we're in a situation where we have to do that anyway. So it's about just taking this moment and putting it in a bottle, and like, don't let it get away from you, you know. You know, and I'm saying it in a way that probably sounds, it is easier said than done. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't worked it out. That's my dream. That's a dream for me. Is that, you know,
it's a beautiful dream.
It's something. It's gonna require some time, you know what I mean, and some discipline, some focus. But I think it's, and you know, for you and I, what up, Doug? For you and I, it's like, you know, we know how to do it. You know what I mean? It's not like we, you know, we didn't have a relative that like got us in or paved the way for us to step on, which is also good, but we didn't have that. So we had to like work our way up there. You know what I mean? And so we made those films. We made Martha. You know what I mean? We made Mother George. You know, we made Tiny Furniture. We made After School. We made all those films so that, you know what I mean? So we know what it's like. It's not, we know that feeling. It's not, and you know, and when people say it's hard, it's going to be hard to go back to that. It's not true. That's kind of, honestly, most DPs we know, that's really what they're yearning for anyway. That's the biggest conversation. It's like, I just want to go back to that thing. You know what I mean? It's just, you know?
Yeah, totally.
You know, so.
Well, and that's the reason I've jumped. The questions coming in, I mean, there's been a lot of love for what you guys are talking about, and exactly how you're ending that, Bradford, is like what people were responding to the fact that, especially Jody, when you're talking about some of the stuff you're shooting in the lockdown, how you went back to such a simple way without all of this, what we know to be the circus around ourselves. So one of the questions I found really interesting, somebody was asking and saying as a statement, it feels like both of you have like intrinsic interest in the old, if we all remember the old Dogma manifesto, the old way, right? Exactly. We all Dogma 95, like, okay, let's make a movie, handheld, real location, just this. I mean, obviously there was a lot of extremes to what all the rules were. But one of the questions that came in is like, are you guys interested in there being a new revolution of going back to this way of making a movie in such a simple, bare bones way?
Well, I think it's always good to have rules, right? Like, I think rules can help make something specific. And that doesn't mean you can't break them while you're working. But I think as a starting point, it's good to have rules. Like, does it have to be dogma specifically? Obviously, no. Like, whatever serves the story, whatever like accommodates the story. Like, for example, I know this much is true, we never did any vertical movement, we never did any dolly shots, right? So it's like that has a huge impact visually on how that feels. And it also really affects the actors and how the actors can move and where they think they can and can't go and all those things. So just a simple thing like that. And then it's like, oh, also let's do a dolly shot, right? Like at the right time, so I think that can have a huge power to it. I was just watching a Kurosawa movie where I think there's one tracking shot in the whole thing. When it happens, it kind of just makes you kind of sit up a little bit, the fact that if there was no rule, then that wouldn't happen, so yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I love the fact you got time to watch Kurosawa, man. Come on.
Well, I have 2, you have 3, right?
So. I know, it's great. That's it. There it is. I mean, I think I would say that. Okay, this is pure analysis. This is not criticism. Let's make the distinction. This is film analysis, because a lot of those dogma films work to me. You know what I mean? Form, content, all of it. I feel like some of them better more than others, but this is analysis. I think part of the thing that didn't always work for the dogma films to me is that the form didn't always meet the story where the story needed to be. Like it was the cart before the horse thing for me. They put a form before the actual story. And for me, the story has to inform the form. So every story can inform a new dogma, but I find it illogical and sort of problematic to me that a form determines the story. The form come before the story. I think that's just that in my process. That's not the way I imagine it should happen in so many ways. Though in many ways for them, the Dogma 95 group, it worked. I mean, I think if anything I'm interested in revolutionizing now is like getting back to like story. You know what I mean? Like let's get back to story, and then from the story, then we can start to develop a much more interesting, profound dogma. Like I'm all about rules, you know what I mean? But let the story determine the rules, And I think before we start getting it's always the question, in school, it was just like, what is content and what is form, and can one be separate from the other? You know what I mean? It was like that whole thing when you're like 19, like, ooh, what is content? What is form? And what comes first? And it's true. Like honestly, for me, content comes first. You know what I mean? Then we can go for the form. That's how it works for me. You know what I mean? Like I used to have agendas. I go in with the agenda thing, like, oh, okay, we want to do this. But now it's hard for me to do that because I realize how much of what I'm doing, whether it be just totally standing back and not doing anything or very active, is all determined by the story in front of us. And so I hope the real revolution comes from the kind of stories we are presented with, the kind of stories we're putting out there.
Yeah, and I also think, on a purely technical level, it's like the fact that all of those dogma movies were made and all those rules were adhered to in maybe stories that otherwise wouldn't have used those technical rules, then you get to see this new recipe where like, oh, whoa, that was, this feels a certain way. Like no one would have ever done this way otherwise. And then you get to learn that feeling of seeing that happen. And so like it influences what comes later in a big way. Like there are things you can draw from. So it's like not necessarily how I would do it, but it's like I learned a lot from watching those movies in college and stuff. And yeah.
Yep. We need to get Anthony Don Mantle on one of these, man.
The other thing that a lot of questions came in was about, since both of you kind of have, grown into larger projects, the question is, what from your very early beginnings working on small sets do you keep ideologically with you when you're on a much larger scaled up production?
Lighting.
Legit.
Yeah, like that's one, but that's like main. Like I'm not trying to get fancy. I'm not trying to recreate the wheel. Single source lighting is great. It's just good. So even if it's like, the Millennium Falcon or a basketball court, like the light's coming from one direction, and I still think that legitimizes, like, I think the bigger films I've done, that kind of, in some ways in my mind, maybe not for everybody, but in my mind, it sort of legitimized why I was there, like that one specific thing. It was like, okay, I'm on this big film and I see all these other big films that are kind of in these tempo zones and they've got things pop, LEDs twinkling and all this stuff. And I'm always just like, how do they do that? You know what I mean? For me, it's like, I can only legitimize myself being here if it's like, to the production designer like Neil on Solo, it's like, okay, where's the windows? Where are your windows? Where are you putting, we're putting emphasis on how big, how small they are, because I'm only thinking that the light's only coming in from that one place,
Mm-hmm.
That's what I bring. I definitely bring that to the table every time.
That's very wise. I think
right?
Because
then I know it's working. Then I'm like, all right, well, hey, I did my job. I shot to the backlight, like we did the right thing,
Yeah, for me, I mean, there's many things. One thing that comes to mind is that it's really hard to stop before you start, like before you roll, and to look at what you're doing. It's so hard to remember. Just literally like take 3 seconds and just stop and look at it. And like, it's sometimes Brad has done much bigger projects than I have, but like when you get to a certain scale, it's just, it's like such a, so many people and it's just moving so quickly, and you're just lighting another shot while you're doing one, and there's another, you're working on another location while you're working on one, and you kind of are like, okay, well, we'll have to start rolling. But it's important to just stop, think about like, what was the last shot? What's the next shot? What's the scene before this? What's the next scene? Why are we doing this shot? And just look at it,
Yeah, I love that.
That's a legitimate one. A mentor told me early on, old Confucius saying, he who chases 2 rabbits catches none.
Exactly.
Because it's always that case. It's always like, we always have so much pressure on me, me as the first AD dealing with the DP. People come, we got to do this, we got to do the other. Where's the second set? We're lighting for the insert car. We're doing this. It's like, all right, let's all count to 10, everybody. Yeah. Let's do one thing right, and then let's move to the other thing. It's very difficult because we all get pushed and pulled in so many ways, and it's a great piece of advice. Let's just all take a breather and look at what we're doing right now.
Breathe.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. And one of the other, there was we have such, Jody, just so you know, we've got a very big international following. And one of the questions actually came in from some guy in Denmark. And it's more of just a statement, but it's something Brad and I have spoken about before. He goes, in Denmark, the working hours are only 8 hours a day. I understand in the United States, you work 12 to 16 hours as a student. Do you ever feel that is too much? From a perspective, this sounds nuts.
Yes.
It's like, how would you be able to be dedicated and have the energy and creativity to work that long? So, I mean, it is more of a state. It's something we deal with all the time. And it's something Brad and I have spoken about wanting to change as we all come back now, because we all know that, I think it's interesting now that, Europeans could look at us and be like, you silly Americans, why do you guys?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough, I did A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the Mr. Rogers movie with Marielle Heller before I did I Know This Much Is True. And Mari very, wisely, negotiated sort of the French hours, 10-hour day, no break for lunch thing for as much of the shoot as possible, which ended up being like 40% of or 30% of the days or something like that. And I mean, there are creative trade-offs to that. It's like you need the sunrise and you need this other time of day, it narrows the window or whatever. But I have to say, I felt much more like a human being in that situation. Eating lunch was great on set. Like, it was kind of awesome. And like, not, just having like a box and working, it's not for everybody, but just the idea that, you can say like, I'm going to be done with work at, 4 p.m. That's when it's over. And that's when I can see my family. It's the difference between waking up before your kids and getting home after they go to sleep, and like seeing them on one side of the day. And it's just such a more human experience. And it's also less dangerous, especially now, as Andrei Perec has been, behind this issue in a big way. And I really agree with him. I know that there's lots of obstacles, but it would be really great if that's how our lives were. So I totally endorse that way of working. And I think creatively too, it was like everyone was like full on the whole day. There was no like lull after lunch. I'm sure, Doug, you've done this before, but it's like it was a different energy on set. Everyone's like excited. And it's like, okay, we're gonna get through the day. It's not this like, well, we're gonna be here for 16 hours. So like, what are we doing next? Kind of feeling, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I've done a few movies that way. I mean, I did one in the States last year. More people are trying to get into it, and obviously, I've shot in Europe a few times. That is the standard, and it really does make a difference. In lots of ways. And it's I mean, I also find it from a scheduling standpoint, you're able to control the day much better because you're not constantly jumping your call time with the actors and getting yourself boxed out of a proper lighting situation that you want, because all of a sudden now you can't make that call time. It's like you can really like pin the donkey during the week and really pinpoint places that you want to be at certain times if need be. So it will be interesting. Brad and I, we started this whole thing with Reed talking about that, and it's an ongoing conversation about, the work hour thing, changing. So we'll have to see. I think it's, now as people are going back, I'm going to New Orleans next week, to start reshoots on a movie that shot last year. And because of all the COVID protocols and everything, it's a fact. That's in place. We have to. It's like 10-hour days, which everyone's doing now for the health aspect. So I'm really kind of hoping that can kind of almost be the gateway, right? Everyone starts to do it because of this health situation that we're in, and then somehow that just becomes the thing. We just have to kind of push the ball forward to see if that's it. Here's another question that is great because it's very indicative of each of you separately. Somebody asked, I love this question. I'll start with you first, Jody. Tell us, what is one essential must-have non-film item that you like to have on set? And it does not necessarily have to be film gear. What is something that, Jody, you always like to have with you on set? Everyone's got their little ticks. Everyone's got a little something they got to have.
Yeah. I don't have a good, interesting answer for that yet. Brad, do you have something that comes to mind?
That question was for you, sir. Sorry.
Yeah.
You guys
let's see. What do I bring? I bring like an extra set of clothes from on like a movie, a rain jacket, coffee, and just stuff. Nothing interesting.
So none of you guys are like I must have my matcha type thing. Someone makes you a little matcha or something like that. Nothing in the weird realm,
PB&J every once in a while is a nice.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one, bro.
All right.
Especially on the 10-hour now, you get you a nice PB&J.
No crazy mint gum. All right, I get it. Okay, you guys are all good. You guys are really easy.
Brad's a vegan. He's
Nah,
very.
not anymore, bro.
Oh, you're not? Oh, I didn't know
Nah,
that. Wow.
long gone.
Okay.
Long gone. Not long gone, but
I always feel guilty that I'm not because you are.
no.
But you're not. Okay,
Free,
great.
free yourself now. Eat that.
Huge weight off my shoulders.
I was, I used to love coffee. I mean, now I'm back, but on decaf, which is kind of crazy, but coffee is good for me. But it won't have the same effect as it did before because I'm not trying to do the caffeine, but coffee's pretty major.
I'm going to ask this one to Jody because I already know Brad's stance on this. So social media and and
This is like a list of things that I feel guilty about because Brad doesn't
well,
do.
we've had this question. Brad's gotten this question before because he doesn't exist in the social media realm. And, we all know that by now. But the question is about your idea of, up and coming DPs who try and get obviously out there and recognized in the social media realm. Any thoughts? I mean, how do you feel about that? Have you seen, is that something that you think, works? Is it just like everything else, just another avenue to get people to, have some stuff, get exposure? What's your idea?
I definitely think it works. Depending, it's sort of like, what do you want? Like what is working to you? But like, I definitely have, I've never had Facebook and I don't use Twitter or whatever, but I have had Instagram for a number of years. And I've definitely met people on that platform who I have become really close friends with and work with, sometimes it's sort of like a more informal route of like starting to get to know someone rather than like going through agents and things like that, which can also be good, or like meeting a person in real life. But so, and I think that there are people now who've like kind of built their careers on that, have become kind of like, at least for, cinematography angle, like kind of celebrities from that. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm like a little bit too old, I think, to have like the mastery of that form to do that, but there's definitely people who have mastered it, and it's very effective. The question is like, how long will that last? Probably forever, because like I don't think that stuff's really going away anytime soon.
Right. That's how Doug built his career. Instagram.
Totally. Yeah, I can tell. I can just look at it and I can
exactly.
see.
That there's definitely an over/under on the age line when you're dealing with social media knowledge. Mine is like, I yell for one of my teenagers every time I'm like, explain to me this. My 15-year-old daughter grabs my phone and she's like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah, but you have to use it now because of this, right, Doug?
Well, in this realm, yeah. I mean, that's how.
See, there you go. You get dragged in like Michael Corleone.
I know, Bradford. This is one for you. I mean, a lot of people, you always, expound such wisdom. People are just like, what is your position on mentorship, and is this something you look down the line to be able to, mentor younger people in your kind of disciplines as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's the reason why I feel like at a certain point, I haven't been good at finding the balance between the amount of work that we have to do, the amount of time we spend on set, and then then you come home and my instance to a full house, and then find time to like be present for mentorship, because I know how much mentorship requires a certain time investment. You know what I mean? Like, let my mentor be the testament. Like, I basically became his child. You know what I mean? Like, I know his kids like they're my brothers and sisters. So I haven't been the best at finding that balance, but I know the importance of it because I wouldn't be here without it. And so I guess in my mind, in my dream, like, I'm not shooting anymore, and I've got, maybe it is a brick and mortar, Jody, where I've got all my photography books, or I've got, all my photography books, a nice coffee machine, and good music, and a good garden, and we just, young folks come through and just build, like, similar to what, Khalil does with the Underground Museum, or, I see myself in that way, we actually, then there's other thing, then there's like, for me, there's also just the more immediate, which are, there's a lot of young people in the community who were friends with their parents and actually have wonderful young people in our community. I'm just trying to big him up. His name is Jossie Mitchell. He's now at NYU undergrad. He got a full scholarship. He's from Baltimore. He's an assassin. He made a film that's just bananas. And then on his way out to go to New York, he was on his bike. He came over and dropped off 2 prints that he made that were just like, who is this kid? You know what I mean? Like, who is this kid? There's obviously that thing too. I'm kind of like, okay, he's close to home and he's a friend and his parents very well. And he's one of our children, but he's also like, he must be protected. You know what I mean? So I feel like in that instance too, I got to be able to find the balance of the mentorship, which is like just being an inspiration and come sit here and be safe and study and hang out here all night. When you're done, just turn the lights out. And, here goes the code to the door or whatever, but also at the same time, like, if you want to work on a movie, come to set. Like I need to be better at that, So it's a really good question. It's actually helpful for me to remind myself that I haven't been the best, but I've had moments, you know what I mean? I've had moments, and it's always exciting to see. It's not like Hailey, you know what I mean? Where he's just got goo gobs and generations of cats, you know what I mean? but I've lived it, so I know the result.
I think there's also probably a lot more people than you realize who think of you as a mentor too. Yeah,
there's a spirit. There's that part of it. That's probably.
And I have to say also, like, I personally, like, very selfishly, I'm sure a lot of people feel this way. It's like I'm very inspired by talking to people who are kind of like earlier on in their career or like younger. It's like really exciting to me to talk to them a lot of the time. And then, like, a small plug here. I'm a part of a website called sidetime.com, and a lot of great DPs and production designers and colorists and are on it. And if for the people who can afford it, you pay to have a phone call with an artist that you really admire, and a lot of the artists donate all of the proceeds to a charity or an organization of their choice. So, like, I do the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and a lot of other people do it too. Like Jade Healy is on it, and a lot of great filmmakers are on there. So it's a good way to connect to people if you can afford it.
Bro, I didn't even know about that. I'm writing it down right now. Sidetime.com. That's incredible. See, there you go. Institutions.
Well, that's great. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'll finish this. I don't have to ask another question, but I do want to read a statement someone made about, this wonderful place that Bradford wants to make. He said, when you build this place, please let us know how to get to it. If not, I'm going to build an underground railroad to get there. I think that says it all when you're referring to, yeah. So that's a wonderful statement. And I think it just kind of sums up how this talk has been. It's been great. As always, these things are great when you get old friends together, old, people who've creatively grown up together to kind of just be able to, talk about it back and forth. As we always say, that it kind of demystifies the process for young filmmakers. One thing we always try and say here at the Film Roundtable, it's about the creative life force is about surrounding yourself with people who are doing the things that you want to do, right? And then as time goes on, you all kind of, grow up together in a certain way. So it's been really wonderful to have you two together and to hear about your friendship. It's been really great.
Yeah, thank you.
Really, really a lot of love.
It's an honor. It's an honor to get some of Jody's time. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely a huge honor for me. And Doylestown. Also, Doug. Doylestown.
Right now, my small town in Pennsylvania, that's where Jody's from.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, you got geographical kinship. Doylestown, Pennsylvania, the new Mecca.
Yeah.
Listen, so before we leave here, as always, I want to thank Maria Prieto, Aaron Weil, and Matthew Wolf. They're also very integral parts to what we do here at the Film Roundtable. And for the first time, I have the honor of saying we'd like to thank Ari Rental as a sponsor for us here. And going forward, they're going to be sponsoring a bunch of these talks for us. So we want to send out a lot of love and reach out to them because, you know, that's great. There's people are starting to recognize, you know, that we're reaching people and people are listening to things that we have to say. So, you know, everything is nice when people give us a little bit of shine. So once again, I want to thank the two of you so much. This has been a great time and a great conversation. And Jody, we're going to get you on sometime very soon. I know that. I'm going to get you to sit and do some of the you know, moderating here. This is one thing we want to do. Jody's going to hopefully be a face for a few more sessions with us, everybody.
Cool.
All right, thank you everyone. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Everyone
Good to see you guys.
Much love. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye.
See y'all. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.